Hello, Ivy here. This week's podcast looks at the language of propaganda and the techniques used in UK media. Propaganda is the dissemination of information, whether that be facts, arguments, rumours, half-truths or lies, with the aim to influence public opinion. UK tabloid media is now globally known for leading the way in the dissemination of information in this way, and is the medium of choice for the UK royal family. I will give illustrations of how it has manifested over the last 5 years and how it has weakened the monarchy itself. The reality is, a hole was dug hoping the Sussexes would fall in and be out of sight, but one by one those who helped with the digging have been falling in themselves, and the rest are balancing on the edge. Karma is making visits. Let's have a look at propaganda techniques. Edward Philanthropic helped to establish the Institute of Propaganda Analysis in 1937 to educate the American public about the nature of propaganda and how to recognise propaganda techniques. Philanthropic and his colleagues identified the 7 most common tricks of the trade used by propagandists. 1. Name-calling. Links a person to a negative symbol in the hopes that the audience will reject the person or idea on the basis of that negative symbol. No evidence. Card stacking. This is the use of statistics, often one-sided. It is biased because it leaves out important information that is crucial to drawing an informed conclusion. Glittering generalities. Name-calling in reverse seeks to make us approve and accept without examining evidence. Plain folks. Something that appeals to regular people. Bandwagon tries to convince audience that everyone else is doing it, so they should too. Transfer. Projecting positive or negative qualities onto a person to make the other seem more acceptable or discredit them. We can think of 1 or 2 occasions where that's happened, and which person in particular. Fear. Disaster will result if the audience doesn't follow a particular course of action. The media attacks, coordinated as they were, on Meghan as soon as it was known that she was Harry's girlfriend. Clear that efforts were being made to prevent a wedding taking place. Few bullet points. Trying to dig up evidence that would paint Meghan in a negative light. Paying people to say negative things about Meghan, even if they were untrue. Media searching for people to interview who were prepared to lie about her behaviour. A proliferation of relatives from Meghan's father's side of the family, who Meghan either did not know or she had not seen in over a decade. All these people were given platforms on TV to spout their hatred, and every day articles appeared about these family members, all paid for by someone, including flying over from the USA to create drama here in the UK as well. One of those relatives even acquired an agent. The father had a representative of the USA Daily Mail spend every weekend in Mexico, claiming to make sure that the father was okay and helping him deal with all the press coverage. So much investment in negativity, but the family and the media continue to say Meghan was welcomed with open arms. As Meghan's father was considered a bit of a loose cannon, it appears that the weekly chaperone duties were needed, I have to say that the images that came out during that period of said chaperone duties look beyond friendly and decidedly seedy. It seems the end justified the means. There was an instance when the Stop the Wedding plan clearly had not worked, and the wedding went ahead. That the said father said in one television interview that the royal family owe me. And he also said his contact by telephone was someone called Jason. As we all know now, that someone who worked for the Duke of Cambridge and who subsequently got promoted after the Sussexes stepped back is called Jason now. Coincidence? I think not. Kensington Palace comes up a lot in other research, including my own. The British royal family remained silent. The Sussex wedding day. Clear negative expressions and behaviour from all members of the royal family in the church, and on too many occasions were disrespectful of the cultural elements, even though there were members of the Commonwealth present and certainly viewing via TV networks. As per the British Royal Family Playbook, lots of performative actions going on. The Prince of Wales walking Meghan up the aisle, giving the impression of coming to her aid in the absence of her father. In reality, the Prince of Wales' popularity is well below what he would like, and even though it had risen from the depths of trash as a result of his treatment of Princess Diana, the rehabilitation of him and his new wife, who was the second in command of abuse towards Diana, still needed a helping hand. The wedding gave him the opportunity to appear like a kind soul, who looked out for Meghan and made sure he spoke a few words to Doria and held his hand out on one occasion to Doria as they all went to the signing of the register. The last series of The Crown took that slight rise in popularity right out, and the Oprah interview with Harry and Meghan took it to whole new depths of the clear indication of in the trash. The Duchess of Cambridge, wearing white for the wedding, or something that looked white, says all I need to say here about her intentions. We all know what was going on there. The story that came out 6 months later about how Meghan had made the Duchess of Cambridge cry appeared out of nowhere and ran for months. Just another part of tearing down a black woman. As we all know now from the Oprah interview, that was another spin of what was the truth, and it was done to protect those in the line of succession and their spouses. The firm has to continue at all costs. Those high in the line of succession will always be protected. Always. The evidence is there throughout history. One snippet from the Oprah interview said by Meghan illustrates this point. They were prepared to tell lies to protect others, but not to tell the truth to protect me and my husband. As part of this propaganda plan, let's have a look at the plot to destroy the marriage. Continual negative coverage, multiple articles a day, including during Meghan's pregnancy. In June 2020, the Sussexes experienced a miscarriage. Since the Oprah interview has aired, British media, in an effort to protect the reputation of the British royal family, let it be known that they have regular contact with the HR team for the royal family. This is an important point, which breaches CIPD regulations, but also illustrates that there is no depth too low for the UK royal reporters to wallow in if it generates coins. The coverage of the court case between Meghan and the Mail on Sunday was vicious, evil in content, and meant to make Meghan drop the case. Now that we know the press were in regular contact with the Royal HR team, it makes it even beyond evil that they conducted themselves in this way. Whilst Meghan was expecting a rainbow baby, UK media continued with their hatefulness. Over 100 articles written in the first 7 hours of one business day by 4 tabloids in February 2021. Not counting the number of articles written by the others. Obsession does not cover the true definition of that kind of behaviour, and all of their articles were negative. The plan failed because the Sussexes left the UK. The location of the Sussexes in Canada was leaked by the royal family to UK media, and as expected, paparazzi were on the scene behaving badly, trying to secure money shots. UK media's response, particularly the tabloids, was that they should return to the UK, where the level of abuse was more refined. Those are my words, but to think that there were any good reasons for the Sussexes to return to abuse in the UK is beyond madness. It would have become worse, because the tabloids would believe that they had the upper hand, i.e. the Sussexes returning meant they could not survive outside of the royal bubble. Security was removed from the Sussexes when they announced in January 2020 that they were stepping back from senior royal duties. Vindictiveness and done with malice intent. The location of their residence in California was also leaked. No member of the royal family in the UK was able to gain any further information about what Sussexes were doing. None of them knew that Harry and Meghan had purchased a home in the USA, as clear an indication as any that they were done with all the nonsense and malice towards them. It transpired that their dwelling in LA for all those months was provided by Tyler Perry, and Tyler also provided the security that was urgently needed. Just think for a moment how that looks to the world. The fact is, Harry's family leaked his location twice and took away his security. It was clear that if the whole Sussex family was wiped out, then so be it. Remember, the firm comes before the family. The end justifies the means in their eyes. Evil, evil people. Tyler Perry is an angel on earth, plain and simple. He did something that Harry's own family, including his own father, was not prepared to do, despite what had happened to Princess Diana. This was another case where the Prince of Wales removed Diana's security out of spite because she was separated from him, and ignored the fact that she was the mother of a future king's children. The Prince of Wales concerned himself with the second in line, and not so much Harry, who they all called the spare, which is a description of all those siblings that come after the firstborn in line of succession. It is beyond cruel. Stages of abuse. Abusive behaviour towards victim. All part of propaganda. All actions within and under that heading. Psychological abuse results in a person feeling worthless, unloved or uncared for. It includes emotional abuse, threats of harm or abandonment, deprivation of contact. Remember, was not allowed to see friends when she wanted to, as outlined in the Oprah interview. Humiliation, blaming, controlling, intimidation, coercion, harassment, verbal abuse, cyberbullying, isolation, withdrawal of supportive networks. Having to ask for her own keys, passport and driving licence, for example, means that the institution knows your every planned move and will stop it if they see fit. In the Oprah interview, Meghan stated that at one point, after being advised to keep a low profile, she only left her home twice in a 4-month period, and some still had an issue with that. Mental health professionals will tell you that this type of abuse shows itself in the victim in a variety of ways and can include anxiety, lack of confidence, low self-esteem, disturbed sleep patterns. Discriminatory abuse refers to an individual or group treated unequally because of characteristics identified in the Equality Act 2010. For methodology in propaganda techniques and abusive behaviour towards targeted individuals, I will include a few similarities with common cult tactics. Common cult tactics used to prevent members from leaving. Fear and guilt are central to any thought reform mind control programme. A fearful person is one who cannot think critically, inducing irrational fears. Members can believe that all kinds of awful things may happen to them if they leave the group. Guilt is introduced in many ways. Guilt because of their weaknesses, mistakes, fears, etc. Add fear and guilt and you get dependency. In destructive groups, the members are placed on an emotional roller coaster. Emotional highs and lows. Cult tactics include creating many emotional highs designed to create euphoria in group activities, especially in public. There are also many lows and problems attributed to the members' inadequacies, punishments for not doing things, being ostracised by the group for not following the rules. The verbal abuse, plus the guilt, fear and shame heaped on the member by the leader. Loaded language. The jargon in cults has multiple effects. Group members feel understood because they all use the same words, and it generates a sense of camaraderie and elitism. Think of the royal reporters and the other royal family friends in the media and their almost identical rhetoric when writing about their prey. When the jargon becomes second nature, talking to outsiders may become awkward, and this keeps members isolated from outside influences. Elitist mentality. As part of cult tactics, members are made to feel special. The members are led to believe that they will change history or change the world, etc. There is a strong sense of mission or purpose which binds them together and keeps them working for the collective, i.e., slaving and sacrificing their thoughts on a life outside. This tactic allows leaders to induce guilt if the individual member is deemed not to be performing their duties adequately. The end justifies the means. Many group leaders are psychopaths. This means that they have no empathy, guilt, or remorse, ever. Add to this their inflated sense of self-worth, grandiosity, and sense of entitlement, and they believe that they can do whatever they like, take what they want, abuse whoever they please, etc., etc., without any consideration for others. For them, the end always justifies the means. Group dominates individual. In destructive groups, the group comes first. Loyalty and obedience to the leadership are highly regarded. To a large extent, cult control causes the well-being of individuals to become enmeshed with the well-being of the leader. Sense of community. When a new member joins a destructive group, there is a strong sense of community, unconditional love, joy and happiness, etc. Once the new person becomes indoctrinated, he or she learns that this sense of belonging very much depends upon good behaviour. If they break the rules, express negative comments, etc., the individual will quickly find themselves ostracised by the group until they sort the problem. and any problem is the fault or responsibility of the member, not the leader. If a person wants to leave, friendships are tested. The group usually wins, and the person leaves alone. When someone leaves, the anger, frustration, disgust, and hatred are encouraged within the remaining group members. Anyone who leaves is considered a traitor. Findings. My findings. Propaganda techniques used by both groups, i.e. UK royal family and cults, a combination of media publications combined with psychological abusive tactics, alongside an organised structure of paid individuals procured to spread hate speech online on social media platforms with the sole aim to influence public opinion against targeted individuals. The outcome of this multifaceted approach impacted the targets and over time begins to influence the way the general public start to form opinions about those targets. Most of the negative views were from within the UK, but there were pockets of people in the USA who began to move in the direction of the propaganda machinery. Positive and negative propaganda. Propaganda isn't bad by its nature. After all, almost any content that relays information can be considered a form of propaganda. Consider rhetoric has been long studied as the art of effective persuasion in speech. Shaping perception and influencing can be done in a moral, immoral, or amoral way, either for the benefit of the one, few, or many, either for a special interest or the general interest. Thus, how we should view propaganda depends upon the intentions, specific tactics used, and the context. Propaganda medium. Types can include news, talk show segments, advertising, public service announcements, advertisements, books, leaflets, web pages, comments online, speeches, posters, etc. Any audiovisual medium can act as a platform for propaganda. There is no means of human communication which may not also be a means of deliberate propaganda, because propaganda is simply the establishing of reciprocal understanding between an individual and a group. The basic flavours of truth. Number 1. Facts. Statements that are logically true. 2. Truth. Real information. A collection of statements that present logically true information in a way that seeks to inform and not mislead. 3. Opinion. A type of information that seeks to convey thoughts, belief. A type of opinion someone believes to be true, either justified or not. Counterfeit information. Information that isn't truth, facts, or clearly stated opinion or belief. Lies. Statements that are logically false, contain falsehoods, or are generally fallacious, usually intentional, as the term generally implies, an intentional lie. Half-truths. A mix of real and fake information that uses a mix of correct logic, fallacious logic, lies and truths, otherwise known as BS. Most propaganda is BS. Disinformation. A type of counterfeit information that uses deliberate lies meant to mislead, including hoaxes. Misinformation. A type of counterfeit information that uses false or inaccurate information. It can range from that which is deliberately intended to deceive to honest mistakes. There is some overlap between disinformation and misinformation, but generally, disinformation seeks to disinform, spread lies, and misinformation seeks to misinform, spread half-truths and confuse. Rhetoric, using any form of information to persuade people with words. Propaganda, using any form of information to persuade people using any medium, especially counterfeit information. In logic and reason, deductive reasoning uses certainty, and inductive reasoning uses probability. Only things that logically follow from one another are certain conclusions. All other conclusions are probable. Fallacious reasoning is reasoning that doesn't follow the rules and standards of reasoning and generally used by UK royal reporters in their hit pieces. I have included a table in the article which describes a number of statements and places them in the category of deductive or inductive reasoning. This will help you when you read articles and give you evidence to challenge their version of events. By hiding behind the words or phrases they like to use, you will be able to challenge them from a basis of fact. General indicators applicable to cults and to the British royal family and the online paid bots to spread hatred on a global scale. The Sussex Global UK podcast on hate groups and their structure, which was episode 20, explored the hierarchy and the risk factor measurements in terms of incitement on targeted groups and individuals. Information was listed in the reference sources of the volume of research done on this subject, and the role that social media platforms act as a conduit to the journey through the layers of all extreme groups. So, as a summary of some of the keywords, I said there's more in the article. Ostracization, to exclude from a group, to make the person go away. Shunning, the word used, style of reporting. Humiliation, punishment for wanting to do things differently, for wanting to leave. Abuse and bullying. Children born into a group or a family at high risk of abuse of varying types, no freedom of independent thought, not allowed to overshadow heirs, not allowed to reach their potential if it surpasses the heirs, breach of basic human rights. Royal reporters and group leaders tick every box in this list in their own right as a subgroup of a cult or the royal family. Tactics applied to try and prevent people from leaving. Tactics applied to force people to return to the fold. Use of propaganda to generate negative publicity and emotional blackmail to persuade people to return to the fold. Punitive actions taken against the ones who wish to leave. Different rules and protocols suddenly appear that never applied to anyone else within the cult or the family. Breaches of basic human rights in order to have a ready supply of members or foot soldiers to continue the entity for decades to come. Children created purely to sustain the continued existence of the monarchy or the cult. In the case of the UK, taxpayers are funding a cult-like entity. cults outside of on the whole, raise their own funds by whatever means. But UK monarchy is publicly funded, and the news media is the propaganda arm of the monarchy, with the owners of the said newspaper organisations part of a professional media group in which the Queen is president. It is a matter of time before sufficient information is out in the public domain that links all these groups of people and their hierarchical structures together with leaders at each stage to follow the money trail to eventually point in the direction of the people at the top of the pyramid. That knowledge is already evident to some, but the power that lies behind such a structure will require a wealth of data that cannot be ignored by the legal powers that exist on a global level. The day will come, and it is not too far away. There are sections of the article that go into more detail about this, and using the phrase the propaganda model. There are various studies on that and books written about it, reports done on it, and they are all listed in the links at the end of the article. But just to use a quote from that particular section, the propaganda model does suggest that the mainstream media as elite institutions commonly frame news and allow debate only within the parameter of elite interests, and that where the elite is really concerned and unified, and or where ordinary citizens are not aware of their own stake in an issue, or are immobilised by effective propaganda, the media will serve elite interests uncompromisingly. When Edward S. Herman and Noam Chomsky discussed the propaganda model in the book called Manufacturing Consent, The Political Economy of the Mass Media, from the political economy viewpoint, they pointed out that money and power can filter some of the information, allowing the government and politicians to spread their words to the public. Propaganda is a set of messages intended to influence opinions of the masses, not giving the opponents any opportunity to rebut the idea. Instead of telling people the truth, propaganda often aims at manipulation of ideas to influence the behaviour of a large number of people. So it presents ideas selectively. Propaganda is related to advertising, where it is about promoting a product. It is also used to influence religious beliefs of society. During the 20th century, the term propaganda acquired a negative meaning in the Western countries. It meant a deliberate dissemination of frequently false but obligating justifications of certain political ideologies. The propagandist seeks to alter the way people understand an issue in favour of the interest group. The main aim of all the groups and individuals involved in the propaganda of the Sussexes, Meghan in particular, have been on this vehicle of negative activity since 2016. And by 2018, when the wedding that the British royal family did not want to take place actually happened, thereby began the deeper and very sinister strategic plans to seek and destroy the target, or targets, who threatened to change a way of life that most were comfortable with and others earned a living from. And the royal playbook, used over centuries and documented in history books, came into play. The first 2 years of activity were merely playing softball, but now it was evident very quickly to those of us who were paying attention to activity in certain quarters that a strategy was being developed. For example, when it came to light that a folder was developed in 2018 relating to bullying allegations that contained no actual evidence but was suddenly made public days before the Oprah interview took place. A file that had names of two people who apparently made such a complaint, and who, when they were informed of the existence of this 2-year-old file, denied that they had ever made a complaint. This file was put together by 2 senior members of staff in the Cambridge workforce. It then comes to light that certain royal reporters have regular meetings with royal HR and have a host of confidential information relating to Meghan. There are so many breaches in regulations here, and none of the people involved are protected from prosecution by the law. Only the Queen has that escape route. One of the serious legal headaches for all those involved in this element of strategy is data protection. The other skill that they all seem to possess is to see a future where a bullying allegation may come in handy, and create a file for such a purpose, but have zero evidence or any documentation to support such a file being put together. Trying to prove the existence of at least 2 years of such behaviour would be very interesting in any legal action taken. It seems that Kensington Palace staff can foretell the future, but to this day seem unable to populate said folder with details months down the line. The bottom line of this closing stage of this podcast is that the bells and whistles approach to using as many minutes of every day to report that such behaviour was the norm for Meghan was all part of the 5-year campaign and counting, of the use of propaganda to try and destroy the character of Meghan, because despite all of their best efforts to pay people to say otherwise, including private investigators, nothing could be found damaging from Meghan's past. Trust and believe that if anything had been found, it would have been on every media portal daily. This propaganda campaign has worked in some sections of the UK population, and a few pockets of right-wing groups in the USA and Australia, and people dotted around the world, based on what they see and read about daily. This particular campaign has not achieved what it set out to achieve, and all the legal cases being discussed in courtrooms are all meant to put pressure on Meghan to give up. It is psychological warfare being played out in a public forum. The UK and its monarchy dropped the golden goose whilst they were making plans to destroy yet another individual who joined the royal family. History repeating itself yet again over centuries of case studies of similar acts. The difference this time is that the target of hate did not come to the British royal family with a blank sheet. She had a very successful life beforehand and millions of followers, and was affluent in her own right. Real-life experiences of having to work very hard for the standard of living that she now enjoyed, and ambassadorial roles with global organisations. A multilingual, highly intelligent major University League alumni. The British royal family and associates chose the wrong one to play games with. Regardless of the outcome of this latest appeal by media, the Sussexes are free and thriving. The UK lost its once favourite prince because of the treatment of the person who became his wife, and who did so much for the UK in the 2 years that she undertook royal duties. Too good for the rest of the family to stomach. The plan to seek and destroy has backfired on a global stage, and it is the British royal family's own acts of propaganda activity that has had a ripple effect of damaging the credibility of the royal family, with each passing act of vindictiveness. Meanwhile, Sussexes are thriving and creating a wonderful legacy for their children, and a growing list of organisations and people who have felt the impact of kindness and generosity of the Archwell Foundation. The moral of this story, and one which I will end this podcast, is to say that despite years of a propaganda campaign being in place, and the people who have come on board with its messages, increasing numbers of people are now beginning to question the purpose of the campaign and its duration. The world has major issues that need tackling, and to see a family and its powerful friends pursue a woman of colour and to put her children at risk because she was not a Stepford clone like all the other females in that family who are left alone is damaging to sensible people. The UK has lost a very valuable member of that family because he supports his wife 100%, and no doubt feels deeply ashamed of the racism that is completely evident by his family, despite it being wrapped up in other descriptions as part of the propaganda campaign. Media hosts were making public statements daily for Meghan to leave the UK and go back to the USA. The media spoke and wrote articles about the acting industry and Hollywood in particular in a very disparaging way, referred to black billionaires in similar terms, and showed no knowledge, did no research, and were so unprofessional in their rhetoric. Yet now members of the British royal family plan to visit the places that they spent the last 5 years describing negatively, using such words as ghetto and referring to all wealthy black people as rappers. And even worse for those who work in the medium of television. Well, now, Meghan and Harry were finally chased out of the UK and are still standing and doing very well indeed. The same cannot be said for the royal family or the UK. Who is sorry now? That's it for this week's podcast. Hope you enjoyed the article. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and I'll speak to you all again next week. So it's bye from me, bye from Ivy, bye.